Like you're all working from home, so that must have its pros and cons. And also the team, the people themselves. Do you feel like there's any particular strong spot and weak spot of the team? If you want to say, obviously, if you don't want to say,
Sure.
if you don't want to say weak spot, that's perfectly fine.
I think the strong spot is we really work well as a team. Like we don't have any office politics, at least yet. So I think that's really the upside. Uh, the downside, that's a hard one to say. I'm not sure about any. Yeah, I don't know about the weak spot. We definitely have the weak. Okay, so I think the biggest weak spot of the team is we are not experienced. So uh, the average age of the team is like 23. So the team is very young, and we none of us have made a commercial game before.
Oh, okay.
And that means we do end up spending a lot of time just learning things or just figuring things out. Whereas if we had someone who was experienced, we would have saved a lot of time. So I think that's the weak spot of the team.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that as well. Like it's
Yeah.
have they ever, like your the people in your team ever developed anything? You said not commercially, but like had they worked with games before or
Yeah, absolutely.
oh, okay.
So they've participated in game jams before. They did like projects in
Okay.
university. They've done their small hobby projects. Yeah. So the team has done things, but like in very small scopes and not in a commercial capacity.
Yeah. Bringing us to the, let's say, the commercial side of it. So social media, you have
Mhm.
to obviously market your game. I know you've written at least one that I've read Reddit article about
Yeah.
marketing your game,
Hmm.
which is very well written, by the way. Let me tell you. Um,
Thank you.
and so yeah, you obviously need to let people know that your game exists in order for them
Mhm.
to actually experience. That's the whole point of creating the thing
Of
in
course.
first place. And you created actually a Kickstarter campaign to get your game, well,
Mhm.
Kickstarted, let's say, to get
Yeah.
your game going. Um,
Yeah.
Even though it didn't meet the goal, it still had
Mhm.
like 70 people, 70 backers. Last time I saw, I think that was the
Yeah.
number. So,
That's correct.
um, I mean, that's still pretty significant amount of people. So, do you plan on repeating that ever again, like the Kickstarter?
So what I understood from Kickstarter is you really need to have a community before launching the campaign, and that was something we didn't have at the time. So we launched the campaign very early on before we even had developed a, a concept, a full concept of the game, and before we had built any community of a size that could pull a Kickstarter campaign off. Uh, so if I am to run another Kickstarter campaign, like that's the main thing that I would be looking for. Do I have a big enough community that can make this happen? If the answer is no, I wouldn't do it. If the answer is yes, it's very likely we'd do it because it's a very exciting thing to do,
And
I think.
what do you do to, or what can you do to build that community to eventually put your Kickstarter out there and have it be successful?
Well, the biggest part of it is making awareness of your game. Uh, and then another one is just getting engaged with the existing community. Now these are two things that we've been slacking a bit in the past 2 or 3 months because we thought we need to have a concept of the game before we do any
Yeah,
of that.
and
So,
and there's only so
uh,
much you can do. Like if you're fully focused on
yeah,
developing the game,
exactly.
you cannot be focused on marketing as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. But marketing is incredibly important. Like, I would say making a commercial game is 80% marketing.
Yeah,
It's very important. And it's incredibly difficult as well. Because
I agree with that.
we are game developers, we are not marketing managers or anything. So yeah, I think that's where the publisher model comes in, and it works really well because publishers have an audience. You as a developer know how to make a game. It's a partnership. You make the game, they market and distribute the game. I think that's why publisher modeling is still relevant to a
Yeah,
good degree. But
that's true. That's true. But it gives
yeah,
you like some constraints, right?
of
Like,
course, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. But yeah, self-publishing has worked really well for so many studios. So it really depends on the situation and you know.
Especially nowadays, like you can market the game yourself.
Yeah,
Even
yeah,
though a publisher
absolutely.
obviously is like a professional way of doing
Mm,
that that can reach many more people than
yeah,
you can. But still, like with the internet, as compared to, I mean, even 10
exactly.
years ago, I don't want to say even 20, but even 10 years ago, it already makes like a huge difference the way
Mm,
you can market your
yeah,
game yourself. And I mean, you
yeah,
guys are doing that pretty well with the Twitter and especially with the Twitter, but everything else. And even this event that like we're doing right now is part of that really for both the
mm,
games really for Universe 51 and your own. People are
yeah,
hearing about both games at the same time.
mm,
That's one thing you can do yourself as a developer
yeah,
to get your game out
yeah,
there. It's much easier right now, and I think it's only gonna
exactly.
get easier out there.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely.
So I
Yeah.
mean, I had a few, I had like 35 minutes planned for this before questions, and
Mm-hmm.
it's been
Sure.
34 minutes right now. So
Uh-huh.
I want to say to people, if they want to ask a question, I still have one more for you, which we will talk
Sure.
about before while people write up their own questions. You can use the
Mm-hmm.
community talks text channel
Right.
to read them and to write them for the people who have questions for Sayed.
Sure.
Meanwhile, I want to ask you this: like, what's your and I mean, this is a very cliche question, but what's your or what tips would you give to someone who's making their first game right now?
Sure. So you may hear tips like start small, don't aim high, that kind of thing. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you should still aim high, but maybe keep the scope niche. Like know exactly like perfect one mechanic of the game and just build around that. I think that that's a good thing to do. But I think the main advice I would like to give is making your own game is it's so difficult, and at times you want to give up because from the moment you decide to make a game until you actually have something to show to someone, it would take you at least like 1 or 2 years, and that means like 1 or 2 years you eating up your saving, uh, which means you are tempted to give up at so many instances. My advice is it would take a long time to pass through that valley of death, but once you through that, I think you're good, especially if you made some good stuff. So just don't give up. If you're really passionate about making a game, just keep going. It would be very hard at times, uh, but you can't imagine how much fun it is making your own game.
Yeah, and a lot of people seem to get caught up in the like you I don't know you're in bed at night and you can't sleep, so you start imagining a really good game that you could do, and then you imagine all these great things, and then you go and actually try to do them, and you realize there's a lot of work and time before you actually see anything 10% of what you actually imagine, and that's where the uh, lack of motivation comes in
Mm.
because
Yeah,
you
yeah,
it's much harder than you actually thought it would be.
yeah,
That's probably where most
exactly.
people who are doing this as a hobby end up giving up, and that's probably
Mhm.
the part that if you go past that, then you can
Yeah, exactly,
you start seeing the results more and more.
exactly,
So it seems
exactly.
like we have a few questions here. So first of all, is the game? I'm reading this for the first time, by the way. So if it's a bad question, sorry about that. No, but I'm just kidding. Is the game strictly based on existing knowledge? And will you guys only use elements based on real ones, or have you experimented with different made-up elements?
Sure. Yeah, so it's 100% based on real data. Now, the only downside of that is the effects may not be noticeable enough in the game, because you know that games usually exaggerate the outcomes. We haven't decided this yet, so we want to keep the material point, the material aspect of the game as close as to reality, but we may end up exaggerating differences slightly more. So, like, for example, going from bronze to steel, uh, like the difference they would make might be exaggerated a little bit so that the players can tell the difference. But this is something that we haven't planned yet. But yeah,
just for gameplay purposes, don't make it
yeah,
like a
for
full
gameplay
simulator. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
that's pretty
as much
interesting.
as we want to keep it realistic,
Yeah,
as you said, like, it's still a game. Like, we have to bear in mind that this is a game,
yeah.
and you play it to have fun. So yeah,
That's what I was thinking. Like, you can expect a bit of realism and that things make sense. But then, yeah, you also want to have it, like, don't have it be a full simulator where you don't have as much fun as you probably would have in a game with a bit of fantasy in it.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So next question: are you thinking of having different materials depending on the biome, like on the environment?
Yeah, so the biome would remain snowy biome throughout the game, but the environments would change. So uh, we're going from like a main village to a forest area to a mining area to a hot spring area to a volcano area. Like that's the plan, although things may change. So the snow would gradually become less, how do you say it? Like, it becomes less snowy as you go through, but the whole biome would remain the same. Although the environment does change as you progress in the game.
Okay, that makes sense. Uh, so third question: what do you think about rational game design? I don't know if Carlos wants to elaborate on that, but I don't know what you have to say yourself. Say it.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that? Either on the voice or on the chat.
Yeah.
I don't exactly know what you mean.
While Carlos elaborates on that, I'm gonna read Nelson's question. Are you guys gonna